Welcome back to All Things Jira. This is Jira. I am not. I am Words the Poet. You can catch me on my channel, Nerd and Bourbon. I have been begging her to let me get on her channel, and she had something to say about Ohio, and that's why I had to. You can't do an unsolved mystery in Ohio without somebody from Ohio. It's like an Ohioan law. You know, y'all don't understand. Y'all don't get it. But Ohioans, we get it. Words like Jake, lake effect snow, pop versus soda. It's all in that same vein. So what is it about? What is it about?
Mary Gillespie lived in Circleville, Ohio with her husband, Ron. She was a school bus driver. So one day she came home from school, she checked her mail, she found a letter in her mailbox. Now, the letter was from an anonymous writer. The writer said that he knew she was having an affair with the superintendent of schools.
The letter also said that they've been watching her home and children, so they have to take her seriously. And it ended with,
"Everything will be over soon."
There was no signature, no return address, and the letter was postmarked in Columbus, Ohio. So she never told her husband. She didn't tell anyone about it. She just ignored it. About 8 days later, she received another letter.
"If you don't stop this now, we are going to harm you. This is not a joke."
So again, Mary didn't tell anybody about her letter. She still kept it to herself. So about a day or so later, her husband, Ron, received a letter. So this letter was addressed specifically to him. And the letter told him about Mary's affair with the superintendent of schools. The letter also said that he needed to do something about it and make Mary confess to this affair. So Ron confronted Mary about the letter. At that point, she didn't have any choice other than to tell him about the 2 letters that she already received. But she told Ron that she was not having an affair. Nothing in the letter was true, but she wasn't sure what to do about the letters. So after Ron and Mary discussed the letters, they decided not to tell anybody about it. They were going to continue to ignore it and hope it goes away. About 2 weeks later, Ron received another letter from the writer because he hadn't done anything about Mary and her affair.
"You've had 2 weeks and done nothing. If you do not make her admit the truth and inform the school board, I will broadcast it on CBs, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out."
So Mary and Ron decided they didn't want to go to the police. They decided to get some family members together to talk about the letter. So they got Ron's sister, his sister's husband, Paul Freshour, and his sister as well. So they all got together. They decided to try to figure out on their own who was writing the letters. So they came up with a list of suspects. I don't know who they decided to put on this list. I don't know how they decided to put them on the list, but they came together and decided to write letters to these people individually saying, I know you're writing these letters and we want you to stop. It was basically like blackmail letters. So they sent out about 4 or 5 letters. They never received any responses from the letters, either in the mail or in person. Nobody said anything to them about it. And for a while, the letters did stop. They didn't receive any letters for a while. So on August 19th, 1977, Ron got a phone call. So when he answered the phone, he immediately got irate. He was having an argument on the phone with someone. No one knows who he was talking to. But when he got off the phone, he was convinced that he knew who it was that was writing the letters. He told his wife and his children he was going out to confront this person. So he grabbed his gun, he left the house, and within about an hour, they got a call that Ron was dead. So apparently Ron had drove his truck into a tree. So he was killed in that accident. When the police got there, they found his weapon in the car, and they realized that he had shot at least one bullet from the gun. They're not sure where he went, who he shot. They don't know what happened.
Paul, Ron's brother-in-law, stated the sheriff agreed with him that there was suspected foul play. The sheriff, Dwight Radcliffe, said he would investigate. Just days later, Radcliffe said he ruled out a suspect. The person had passed a polygraph, and now he considered Ron's death an accident. The sheriff said Ron's blood alcohol level was 0.16. That's 1.5 times the legal limit because Ohio does that. And Ron's family stated that he was not drunk when he left home. Friends and family stated he was not a heavy drinker, so the blood alcohol made no sense to them. Hundreds of anonymous letters were received by not just Circleville, but all over central Ohio. The letters were no longer focused on Mary, Ron, and the superintendent. Now the writer is saying the sheriff was covering something up. 6 years later, the letters were still being received throughout the community. Mary and the superintendent confirmed their relationship, but stated it started after the letters were sent. In 1983, the writers started posting signs along Mary's bus route about Mary and her daughter. One particular sign said, "Tracy Gillespie sucks." Mary got out and ripped the sign down. Now, when she did this, she saw a box behind that sign. She took the box and into the bus and opened it. Inside, there was a pistol. It was set up to fire the gun at Mary when she opened it, but it didn't go off. Mary eventually took this to the police, but she waited several hours before she did. The police found that whoever had done this attempted to file the serial number off, but the police were able to get the number and determine that this gun belonged to Mary's brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. Paul recently separated from Ron's sister. The police questioned, but they didn't tell him about the booby trap. Paul stated that his gun had been missing for a long time and he wasn't sure what happened to it. The sheriff told Paul that his missing gun was linked to the Circleville Letters.
So Paul was asked to come down to the sheriff's station and do a handwriting test. So when he got there, they gave him the letters and the envelopes and told him to write them out the same way he saw them to the best of his ability. Now, that's not how you do a handwriting test. Typically, you would have the person that's giving the test read out some statements to whoever they're testing, and they'll write it out, and then they judge it. They look at it to see if the handwriting matches at all. So they did the test completely wrong, but that's how they did it. When you give a copy of whatever it is you're trying to examine to the person you're testing, even if they're not doing it on purpose, they're going to try to match the handwriting. So it creates a false positive, basically. So Paul didn't know this. He was just doing what he was told, and he wrote out the letters and copied the handwriting to the best he could, and they looked really close. So they determined that the handwriting could have been Paul. So later they went to Paul's home to search his home to look for the gun.
The sheriff then went back to the prosecutor and said it was Paul's handwriting on the Circleville letters and the sign. Paul was arrested for the attempted murder of his sister-in-law. This is when he found out about the booby trap and the sign for his sister-in-law. Trial began 8/24/1983. A handwriting expert concluded that only the dictated samples could be used as evidence, but this was still faulty because Paul had already seen the letters and he was told by the sheriff to try and copy the style of writing to the best of his ability. The evidence was still used. During the trial, Mary testified that she was told by Paul's then wife in 1992 that Paul may have been the one writing the letters. A manager at Paul's job testified that based on his timesheet, Paul worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the week that the booby trap was found. Paul did not work that Monday, and that was the day the trap was found. He had an alibi for the entire day, but the jury never heard him testify to that. Unsure why. He was found guilty and sentenced to 7 to 25 years. It was assumed that he'd also written all of the previous Circleville letters, although he'd not been charged or convicted of writing any of them besides the sign that came with the booby trap. While Paul was in prison, hundreds of letters were still being received, sent from the Circleville writer. They were postmarked in Columbus, Ohio, even though he was in prison in Lima, Ohio. He was put in solitary confinement. He was not allowed to have a pencil or paper, and the letters still continued. Paul said he was put on watch. They searched his cell often. All of his visits, incoming mail, and calls were strictly monitored. The letters were still being received. Paul was a model prisoner, and 7 years into his sentence, Paul was put up for parole. Again, even though he was never convicted of writing the letters and he was still being heavily monitored, his parole was denied based on the letters being still received. After his denial, Paul received a letter from the Centerville person himself saying,
"When are you going to believe that you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Ha ha."
Many investigations were conducted to determine Paul's role in these letters. It was determined that there is no way Paul was writing these letters and sending them from prison. The warden of the prison sent a letter to Paul's wife attesting to this.
So Paul was finally paroled after serving 10 years of his sentence. In 1993, the show Unsolved Mysteries decided they were going to do an episode on the Circleville writer. When they started to investigate the story, they actually received a letter.
"If you come to Ohio, you sickos will pay."
Now, this letter was anonymous. There was no return address. It wasn't signed, and it was postmarked in Columbus. So the show went forward with their investigation anyway. They started to investigate what the sheriff was doing, especially since some of the letters said that the sheriff was trying to cover something up. So they went through all of the sheriff's files, and when they did, they found some information that could have possibly kept Paul from being convicted in the first place. So another bus driver was on the same route as Mary about 20 minutes before her route. And she saw someone at the location of where Mary found that box. So the man she saw was large with sandy hair, and he was standing next to a yellow El Camino. She said when she pulled up, he saw her coming. He didn't want her to see his face, so he turned around. But she was still able to get a pretty good description of him in the car. So the description that she gave didn't match Paul, and the sheriff never really went out to try to find anybody that matched the description, and he didn't even look into the El Camino that she told him about. She also said that no one else came to question her any further or to take an official statement. So based on the investigation that Unsolved Mysteries did, they found 3 other suspects that should have been investigated prior to Paul being put on trial. So one was the superintendent of schools. They never actually looked into him. The other was one of Mary's coworkers that was said to be obsessed with her. And the last was actually Paul's ex-wife, because they were divorced once he went to prison. She had a boyfriend. Her boyfriend matched the description of the person that Mary's coworker saw, and his brother had a yellow El Camino. But no one ever went out to investigate to find out what his alibi was, if he had an alibi. So Paul maintained his innocence up until he died in 2012. And to this day, no one knows who actually wrote those letters. What do you think? Who do you think wrote the letters?
The husband. The husband.
Ron?
Ron with a candlestick in the dining room. Ron with a candlestick.
Ron died. How can he write the letters?
Oh, yeah. Didn't Ron have a brother? Or did he?
You don't think Ron died?
Ron's alive. That's
okay.
Right. Ron did it.
Well, I think it was Paul's wife. I think she was having an affair with the big man with the sandy hair the whole time. She had a new boyfriend after she divorced him.
She probably knows what his
sandy hair.
handwriting.
His brother had the yellow El Camino.
Yeah, and she knows what her husband's handwriting looks like, so she could have, faked it. Yeah,
right.
You're right. You're probably right. I think I want to go with the Ron theory because it just makes a better movie. The MCU should pick it up. We get Ron solve mystery. I think it works. Ron did it in the dining room with a candlestick. My final answer.
Well, I think we solved it. I think that's what it is.
That's A. So if there's reward money, I'm not going to Centerville. I don't want to get any letters. I'm not with it. I'm not faking my death. I'm just, no.
Do you know where Circleville is?
Centerville, Circleville. Let's see. Take me to Circleville, Ohio. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes from me.
Oh, yeah. He'll get you.
Yeah, I'm not with it. I don't want it. No. Pineapples. I'm not ready.
Pineapple?
It's an old Kevin Hart.
What is pineapple?
It's an old Kevin Hart. That's the safe word. Kevin Hart's safe word.
Okay.
Jeez. People don't be knowing nothing. Pineapples?
I don't know everything.
Pineapples? Jeez.
Look, all I know is Unsolved Mysteries.
It's back.
That's all we got.
Unsolved Mysteries is back. Watch it on Netflix.
Is Netflix paying you?
No, I'm paying them a lot. Watch my channel. Like and subscribe to All Things Jira. The Nerd and Bourbon. I have PayPal
All
links
right.
on my channel. So, if you want to contribute anything at all, feel free
Really?
to press that, and then a numeric denomination of your choosing. It would help a lot. I have a very beautiful daughter that some of that money could go to. And I
Well, I need
also
to ask
like
you.
bourbon. And well, this is whiskey, but I like bourbon. So if you don't like kids, but you like alcohol, the money might also go to that. So pick your poison. How do you want to help me? How do you want to help her? We.
Anyway. Well, that was my story for today. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, and come back next Wednesday. Bye.